Ladies and gentlemen, Big Hairy News.
Hey, kia ora koutou te whānau. Welcome back to another episode of Big Hairy News and the best ofs, the last week of the best ofs. Emily and Magenta are back next Monday live, the 19th from 9 p.m. to get back into, man, the biggest year of years, 2026, how massive this is going to be. It's going to be huge. I know everyone's talking about one-term government. Yeah, I'm just going to do what I can to provide you guys the information that you need to make the decisions to help your political perspective. I'm not saying it's going to be a one-term government, because historically speaking, under MMP we haven't seen one-term governments. But if the left votes, the left wins. Tonight on the show, News Talk ZB and the platform's narrative on politics is influenced by the Free Speech Union and the Taxpayers Union to 80%. So 80% of the narrative on News Talk ZB and the platform that's not directly supplied by political parties is supplied to them by the Free Speech Union and the Taxpayers Union. Paul Barlow brings us a chat tonight about that. Also, this government is 100% responsible for all of the meth use in New Zealand at the moment, the massive uptake. We'll have a look at that. And of course, David Seymour, pretty grumpy about New Zealand First and now National, saying they're going to campaign against the Regulatory Standards Bill. The Regulatory Standards Bill, which they passed with David Seymour, and now both Winston and Luxon are going, no, maybe we'll take it down in our next election cycle. Go figure, eh? In fact, let's start with that. Here's David Seymour being pretty butthurt about National and New Zealand First campaigning against his Regulatory Standards Bill. Let's get into Chloe and David Seymour, yeah?
Oh, this is good. I'm glad you've got this, Pat. This is really good.
It's a strange interview, this one. Oh, 666 right now. People watching. Everyone take a breath. 670. Just like that. It's all gone. All the fun's gone. This is quite a strange interview. I found this quite strange because there was kind of quite long and meandering conversations and a few real kind of bang, bang, bang in between. But so the clips aren't really, really short. They're not really, really long either. They're like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. But I think it's worth looking at. The first conversation is around the school lunches. And as I said earlier, I mean, this is not a nothing story, right? If this is a failure of the system, then it's a systemic failure that's been going on since this whole system started and changed. But David Seymour having, organisations backing him up, saying this is the most likely scenario, and the principal going, absolutely not. It's like the principal's got video footage, they reckon, but they can't release it. It's like, just show us. Just show us. I saw TVNZ speaking to the principal this morning, and TVNZ requested to see the footage and agreed that they'd see it but not show it, just so they could see it, and they still said no. I'm like, if you've got it, you can show it, even if it can't be broadcast for privacy reasons, but they still wouldn't show it to TVNZ. So there is an air of he said, she said about this whole thing. And you know us, I would love nothing more to be able to lay this at the feet of David Seymour, but it feels like a bit of a not going anywhere kind of a story. Anyway, this is where these guys start talking about is the school lunches.
I'll start with you on the school lunches thing. The multi-rancid school lunch story, the plot thickens by the hour. What are you thinking this morning?
Look, I mean, I think the story here is not the Deputy Prime Minister once again using his platform to bully a member of the public. That's very clearly a welcome.
Can I just say, Chloe's very on point, as you would expect with this messaging. She just basically ignores the conversation around the individual school and talks to the broader, potentially systemic issue.
Direction, which he's egging on. The story here is that this government came to power gutted the school lunch program by cutting 2,000 local jobs of people who knew the kids in their communities and were creating high quality school lunches, and instead replaced it with a contract for a mega corporation who has gone on to produce slop, basically, inedible slop, which has burnt our children, been served mouldy, and is now making our kids sick.
Very good.
The story here is that this government has taken literal school kids' lunch money and reprioritised it for tax cuts. Different political choices can be made, and New Zealanders deserve better.
Okay, all right. That is out the starting blocks. That's a strong start.
That is a perfect messaging from Chloe, because she didn't say it, but the truth is no one knows whether David Seymour's correct or the principal's correct in the situation yet. Although if we have video evidence and no one's seen it, and I've seen a few people go past in the chat saying privacy of the children, I get that, but that's not stopping a journalist from seeing it, and the journalist going, I have seen this. What the principal, I verified it. We cannot show it because of privacy reasons, but the way it's being reported is accurate. So either the school has that information and is naive to how they can use it, or there could be something else going on. I'm just saying could be. And again, I'll say, you know me, I'm not trying to back up Mr. Seymour here, but at the moment, nobody knows 100% what's happened. So it was great from Chloe to basically use this opportunity to talk about other issues around schooling.
Perfect. It is the gold standard about how to handle these two.
Yep.
You cannot push her off the point. It's great.
Yep. No, 100%.
David, first of all, is the money that is being saved being reprioritised to go somewhere else, or is it going on other school lunch programs?
Well, I mean, first of all, we've actually managed to increase funding for early childhood, so there's another 10,000 young children getting lunches that they wouldn't otherwise get, so that's part of it.
The other thing that David Seymour's been about in the last couple of days is guess who and this whole conversation around school lunches being bad, around vulnerable kids needing school lunches, guess who's the one group of people he praises in all of the interviews he's doing? The one group of people he continually praises, and he doesn't use this word, but that's what he's saying, are the good parents who feed their own kids.
Oh, yeah.
Constantly. And I've seen him talk in 3 different interviews on this. Constantly it's hey, but let's not forget, and I'm paraphrasing, all the good ones out there. He doesn't use that term, but that's what he's saying.
But what we've actually done, if you look at the bigger picture, is that we've taken a scheme that was costing about $340 million a year. We've nearly halved that cost, so we're saving
we've quartered the quality, so bad move.
Hundreds of millions of dollars a year, and actually, overwhelmingly, people are happy with the way that it's performing.
Is the throwaway
were
rate...
there problems in the first term? Yep. Did we fix them? Yep.
Okay.
This, in a country that needs to save money and do stuff more productively,
and now,
it's actually a huge success story.
David, now, is the throwaway rate of the food the same as what it was for the previous lunch program, or is it higher?
Question from
we
Ryan
monitor
Bridge.
surplus, and it's about the same. I mean, it bounces up and down 1% or 2% from week to week.
So not inedible, you wouldn't say?
No, I mean, we're delivering 250,000, but could I just acknowledge another group of people who get forgotten?
The good ones.
Is the parents, the other 75% who send their kids to school with lunch that they pay for, that they prepare. I actually campaigned against the school lunch program funded by taxpayers, but I've been given a job to do in government.
All right, fair enough.
Done it,
and you're doing it.
So just a little side note. Occam's razor here. The guy who didn't want to fund school lunches, he just acknowledged it. He campaigned against it. He literally wanted to take food out of your children's mouths, is now running a system that of the last 2 years, 18 months has been appalling. Do you think that's a byproduct for Mr. Seymour, or maybe the focus? Remember, he didn't want it at all. So wouldn't it make sense that someone who didn't want it at all, it's like when that one person in the flat doesn't wash the dishes properly, and eventually you go, oh look, just leave it, I'll do it. So they're not washing the dishes on purpose, so you stop asking them to do the dishes. Is there any part of this which is it's designed to maybe not perform so well, because then maybe people will stop using it, because maybe we can then get rid of it? Maybe. Just thoughts, David Seymour, not accusations, just thoughts. Shall we?
100% enshittification.
Yeah.
That's his aspect here. He wants an unworkable, unpopular program so he can cancel it and say, well, I'm just doing what you wanted me to do. He hasn't looked at any of the fringe benefits because they never do. It's not about the local communities. It's not about the hungry kids. It is just about dollars on a spreadsheet. That's all he cares about. And if he gets to enrich some multinational corporation along the way, well, that's even better.
If they've halved the money they're spending, but the quality and the uptake is 1/10 what it was, then that's a bad financial decision. But as Chewy's saying, as long as number lower, David Seymour bows, because that's all he's interested in. Bit of a chat as well now about the Finance and Expenditure Committee conversation and the crack that Chloe had at Nicola Willis, especially around the climate budgets. And they have quite a good backwards and forwards, and well, again, Chloe on point, on message around what New Zealand needs to do, what New Zealand is doing with our Paris Accord, the climate, the commitments we've made to climate in this country. And David Seymour says the quiet part out loud. He just goes, well, if they're not doing it, yep, we're not going to do it. We're just not going to do it. Why would we? If they're not doing it, we're not going to do it.
Chloe, I want to talk to you about the select committee yesterday, Finance and Expenditure, and the grilling that you gave Nicola Willis, and you got from her a piece of information, which is that they're not going to buy, we're not going to buy our way overseas out of the climate change obligations. But is the government actually on track currently for the next couple of climate budgets? And, you know, is this something that we need to be freaking out about?
Well, a lot to unpack in all of that. So I guess first things first, what you're talking about in that grilling with Nicola Willis is something called our nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement. It's really important to note that this is something that was initially signed up to under John Key's national government.
Yeah.
So those nationally determined...
Never have the words, this is not John Key's national party anymore, been truer.
Contributions are basically all countries all across the world saying, hey, look, we need to stay below 1.5 degrees of warming, which is necessary for life on Earth as we know it. And here is what each of us individually as countries are going to do to meet those carbon emissions reductions. So other countries don't care how we meet that nationally determined contribution, those NDCs. We either do it domestically here at home, or we pay other countries to reduce their emissions. Long story short, basically because successive governments have kicked the can down the road on this issue, we knew back when actually James Shaw was the Minister for Climate Change that we were going to have to rely on working with other countries to reduce their emissions, as well as doing everything that we can do here domestically at home. However, since this government has come to power, they of course have shredded climate action, which has increased the liability for us to pay other countries to reduce their emissions because this government is refusing to do that here at home. So what happened at the Select Committee yesterday is I got on the public record that our Minister of Finance, in line with the Minister of Climate Change and our Prime Minister, have all committed to meeting the Paris Agreement nationally determined contribution. What that means is we have a commitment to meet it. And they are showing through their actions that we're not going to meet that domestically, which entails that we must therefore be paying other countries to meet that NDC.
David, where does this... I'm confused.
Nuance, explanation, history of this, what we need to do, what we're going to do, right? That's Chloe. Seymour? Nuh-uh. That's his move.
Because there's a Ministry for the Environment report that was out just 2 days ago now, and it says that we are on track to reach 2050 net zero goals. The next two budgets, emissions budgets, will be met. If you look at our emissions overall in the last year, they've actually come down. So I'm confused. We're hearing that we're not good, but then we're hearing from the Ministry of the Environment that maybe we are. What's going on?
Well, it's pretty simple. New Zealand is not going to win any friends internationally or at home by killing our own economy in order to satisfy some target that other countries themselves are not actually pursuing seriously.
New Zealand is not going to win any friends by accepting and running with that clean green image, the 100% pure image that we know are known for. I think a little bit on the dodge, but are known for from around the world. New Zealand is not going to win any friends by being focused on the environment and nature over profit. That's literally what he's saying. I would like to put that to the tourism minister and see what they would have to say about that, because I think that's one of the reasons, the exact reasons, why New Zealand and how New Zealand wins international friends.
By some target that other countries themselves are not actually pursuing seriously. We will do what the rest of the world does, but we're not going to send New Zealand farmers and New Zealand industry and New Zealand jobs overseas to pursue, frankly, a political goal.
So
that's
seems
as simple as that.
You seem to be saying that we're not going to go ahead with do the Paris thing, if it's going to cost us. If others aren't doing it, then we won't do it either.
That's right. I mean, if we are not going to be the last people at the party, because that is A, bad for the economy, and B, bad for the environment.
Chloe, does that contradict what Nick...
How, just out of interest, missed question, Mr. Bridge, how would being the last people at the party, meaning the only ones who are still trying to adhere to a decrease of climate emitting gases, etc., how would that being the last one at the party trying to achieve that be bad for the environment? Because I don't know if he's heard that at the end when Ryan started talking over it. He says it would be bad for the economy and bad for the environment, being that person. Listen again, and then we'll let it go into Chloe.
It is A, bad for the economy, and B, bad for the environment.
Chloe, does that contradict what Nicola told you yesterday?
It is a basket of contradictions, and the Minister of Finance contradicted herself in her own answers, let alone the stand up to the media after that select committee. But if I can just go back to that point that was being made just then about our farmers. Farmers are among those hit first and worst by climate change because of the fact that climate change contributes obviously to increasing frequency and severity of climate change charged weather events, but also it ultimately contributes to an atmosphere which means less predictability when it comes to our food growing capacity. So actually ensuring that we are investing in the just transition for our farmers is about building resilience and ensuring that we can grow high quality good food into the
and yet
future.
somehow
Climate change, I also need to know, is a cost of living disaster.
Out of business in order to achieve that goal.
No one is saying that. In fact, what the Green Party has consistently shown is how
we're moving on. I think you're the right
moving
person
on
to tell farmers what they need.
All right,
Jesus.
Well, you wait for the last clip though. So it's building, and the last clip is about national and New Zealand First voting against the regulatory standards bill, and then it all goes off. It's fantastic. But before we get there, Chewy, he's just, I wrote down on my page, I don't know if this is intelligent political commentary, but I was thinking of a t-shirt and it just says, "Hey David, eat a bag of dicks."
That's intelligent. That's fine.
I just pictured a wall of these t-shirts at a public event that David Seymour might be running. And look, Christmas is coming, and we're not gonna have anything done by then. We also have a new t-shirt idea with is doing dumb shit so you don't have to. Maybe in the new year we're gonna have a couple of new t-shirts. I think "Hey David, eat a bag of dicks" is going to be made, and it's because I get frustrated even. See, the thing that, one of the things that pisses me off about this show is it's on the internet. It doesn't need to have the tight timings. They just choose to. They choose to run it like a radio show.
Yeah.
Pause. What do you mean, David, that our country, New Zealand, continuing to adhere to, mitigating climate change and fighting back against it would be bad for the environment? Can you expand that to me? For me? You know what I mean? It's missing. Anyway, Chewy, yours.
Yeah, look, just as far as the end of that interview goes, first of all, I love the fact Chloe keeps on going and just makes these guys try and talk over her, but she doesn't stop. I rate that. It frustrates me when Seymour and Ryan get away with over talking, especially a female guest, to shut them down. I feel like Chloe is the only adult in the room most of the time. Like, David Seymour gets so much press time for his ideological sound bites. And he'll come out swinging and say the Green Party is ideological. They're both right. I just wish farmers could see that the dreaded Green Party is concerned about what they're going to get smacked in the fucking teeth with.
Yeah.
But they're going to cling to no farmers, no food. We feed 40 million people, which is bullshit as well. And just use that to avoid any sort of the words escape me. Any sort of responsibility, I guess, for what is coming. And this attitude from David of like, well, we can't be seen as leaders. We're too small. I utterly reject that vision for New Zealand. Like, he'll turn around and go, well, look at China. They pollute so much. But also look at how much China is decarbonising at a frankly unprecedented, barely comprehensible rate that they are decarbonising. And we're just sitting here going, yeah, we can't do anything about the cows because of the milk solid prices. And I'm sorry. I've got a sign out. I saw signs on the side of the road the other weekend that says, let's quit Paris. These farmers would cut off their fucking, not just their nose, their entire face. They don't understand that if we flush Paris, we start losing free trade agreements with the EU.
Yeah.
Their markets start closing. There are consequences. There are immediate financial consequences for the country. There are diplomatic fallouts from this decision. And there is the bill that the climate is going to make us pay.
Yes, let's get on to the last part of the conversation, shall we? Because it has to be one of the worst, and I'm not even, forget our perspective on the regulatory standards bill, but to have two parties with their full throat support it, stand up in the House, sing its praises, and then both parties within, I think, 2 weeks, maybe even less, maybe 10 days, one say they were going to run against it next year, and the second one hinting that they might run against it next year. This has to be one of the worst political pieces of legislation ever. Now, I'm not actually saying, I mean, it's worse for lots of other reasons, but I'm just like, the embarrassment that this does. Imagine someone in America, imagine a Democrat voting for something, standing up, and they had to be elected, and then 2 weeks later they were talking against it. You know, it's just ridiculous, and there is no comeback from it. It just goes to show what a skeleton of a good idea it possibly is, meaning it's not one in the slightest. And this gets brought up at the end of the conversation, and yeah, David does not react well to it, and Chloe queens out, as per usual.
David, the Regulatory Standards Act. So we've got New Zealand First going to campaign against it at the election, and now potentially National going to campaign against it as well. Is this dead in the water?
Not at all. And the first thing I would...
So the thing that David was saying last week, that is, it's not dead in the water because ACT would have to vote for it as well, and ACT's not going to vote for it. No, David. Labour will vote for it. Labour will vote for it with National and New Zealand First, and it will get repealed. For some reason, and I'm sure he does know, so I don't know why he's quite doing this, he keeps talking about this is not dead in the water because ACT is not going to support these other two parties. Yeah, but the Greens will, Te Pāti Māori will, Labour will. In fact, it'll end up being 112-9 or 113-8 next year when they repeal it. So, you know, let's not be an idiot about this.
Campaign against it as well. Is this dead in the water?
Not at all. And the first thing I would say is we have a big problem in our country with productivity. You know, we actually are not earning enough. People talk about a cost of living crisis. I would say in the long term, that is a problem that we don't earn and produce enough to pay for the things that we want.
Yeah, but
as a
how
country.
productive is the act? How productive is the act going to be if it's not there?
Well, the reason that it'll be there is that every other party, except for ACT, has actually failed to say, where is your deregulation agenda? How
Yeah,
are you
but
going
that's
to
not.
improve?
That's a hope strategy, Chloe.
Why would the Greens and why would Labour and why would Te Pāti Māori need to have a deregulation agenda? But I'm not saying that there aren't some things that can be deregulated, but why would this stay in place because they don't have the deregulation agenda that ACT does? Again, makes no sense whatsoever.
Your deregulation agenda. How
Yeah,
are you
but
going
that's
to
not.
improve?
That's a hope strategy, Chloe, isn't it? That's not going to keep the bill there.
Just a second. This is, the productivity and the quality of regulation in New Zealand are important topics.
No, I get it.
I don't know if you've ever watched a sport, Chewy, and on the sideline when the reserve is about to come on, like for the last 20 minutes of the game, they're amped and they're bouncing and they're actually staying warm and they're getting ready to go in. Just think about that when you watch Chloe getting amped up to join this conversation off the bench.
This is, the productivity and the quality of regulation in New Zealand are important topics.
No, I get it.
I just make the point that the ACT Party has a clear strategy. Regulatory standards, Ministry for Regulation, sector reviews, cutting red tape,
I
saving
understand
hundreds of millions of dollars
but
already.
your coalition partners have a clear strategy to rip up everything that you're talking about.
If you'd let me finish, I just make the point. They're ultimately going to have to come up with an alternative, and so far they haven't.
they're not.
And that's why I think we're going to end
What's
up
your message
with
to
the
Winston?
Well,
No, they're not. They don't have to come up with an alternative. They can just repeal it. So when you guys got rid of the ferries, what was the alternative you had? What was it?
Open sea.
Oh, I can see. Well, when you guys got rid of Smoke Free 2025, what was your alternative to bringing down smoking? No, nothing. What is this bullshit? All of a sudden, if they're going to cancel it, they better come up with an alternative. No, they can just cancel it, just like you guys have spent your whole 2 years doing.
with an alternative, and so far they haven't, and that's why I think we're going to end up.
What's your message
with
to
the
Winston?
Well, it's very simple. This country needs to raise productivity, it needs to cut red tape. The Regulatory Standards Act is the way that our government is committed to doing that. If people want to present an alternative, they can, but nobody else is talking about how you get red tape and regulation down so we can get wages up. That's what we
Chloe,
have to do.
what are you seeing when you look at this squabble?
Yeah, look, the Regulatory Standards Act is basically one of two things. If you're to listen to David's own Ministry of Regulation, it's new yellow tape. It is duplicative, it is a waste of time, and in a nutshell,
That's not what
it is not going to do anything meaningful to actually address the issues that we are facing. If you're to take David's own diagnosis of regulation, people can look at the regulatory impact statement, that's on the public record. At the other end of the spectrum, if you're to listen to legal experts, to environmental experts or otherwise, you'll see that it is potentially a sidelining of community, of conservation, of climate considerations, all to provide a fast track for prioritising the interests of corporations and of those who own things. So, in a nutshell, it was also overwhelmingly opposed by 90% of New Zealanders.
I need to prioritise some corporations right now and pay some bills by doing some ads.
Didn't notice that. Only the people who made submissions. 90% of only the ones who made submissions, the ones who voted, and you might say the ones who voted, they made submissions, only 90% of them. Because like that means, Chewy, there was only like 150,000. There's still like 5.3 million, and they're all on my side. So that's only the ones who did submissions.
To prioritise some corporations right now and pay some bills by doing some ads. Appreciate you both being on the show this morning as always. Chloe, thank you for being with us from Wellington. Chloe Swarbrick from the Greens and David Seymour from ACT.
What an enormous, wet, soppy, floppy cock David Seymour seemed to be in that interview. Just the little in the background as Chloe's just listing facts. He's the first one to go contest me in the marketplace of ideas, but all he's got in the background, he sounded like a fucking Hillman hunter on a cold day. Just that, I don't know why anyone looks to him for leadership. It's the least inspiring human we've got in that building, and that's saying something.
Has
he got his cookie yet?
Wow. Interesting. conversation to be had. So, the cookie was supposed to turn up to Wellington today. I'm just being very careful with the image I've got here that there's no identifying information. I don't see anything. I think it's fine. And it turned up quite late in the day to our army in Wellington. But I do like what I see. And what I see is a note on the top of the cookie that says, "Dear David, we noticed you were very dismissive of the number of schools signing on to rangatira. We assume that now it's over 1,500. You would be happy to eat your own words. Please find enclosed an opportunity to do so with a delicious cookie." Now, in saying that, you know, it's very interesting, and we've said this earlier tonight already, how the one thing David Seymour does is he blames everything else, or he dismisses everything else. You know, well, it's only the people who made submissions, 90%, only them. So whereas if you said to him, well, you've only got 8% of the vote, so you actually should shut the fuck up and sit in the corner. No, they're the ones who came out and voted, and you know, it's his own, to his own. He uses the narrative to what he wants. I can give you a little bit of a poll. The Facebook post that I put up last night showing the cookies, this is take photos of them before they left Mustache. We have a small but growing audience of about 18,000 Facebook followers. This has been viewed 200,000 times in the past 24 hours. Look, if I'll even show you, I'll show you behind the curtains. Insights, there you go, 200,150, just ticked over. Now, I would say, and this is something I found interesting. See this? It said 5,645 interactions. One of them is a grumpy face. Now, that might be a grumpy face towards David Seymour. But even if we said it, out of the 5,645 interactions, one is potentially a grumpy face. Now, I don't know what you think, Chewy, about stats and numbers and research, but that says to me that that people are kind of interested in what's going on here. 237 shares, 212 comments, and it's been liked 3,200 times, liked or emojied 3,200. Now, for some pages and for some shows, that's not particularly a big number, but when you've got, 18,000 followers, it's a good performing, it's a good performing post. So I said to Magenta, if they don't get there today, not to worry about it, because Magenta's on a plane tomorrow and I don't want to put extra pressure on. But my understanding is Magenta lives quite close to Parliament, so I think Magenta is going to do it tomorrow. If Magenta, if you're in the chat, you can let us know. I think it's still going to happen. And yeah, because did I tell you guys last night that Mustache made a mistake and sent us 2 orders out? Did I tell you that? Oh no! Because one of the orders.
What a horrible mistake!
I know. So I've actually told Magenta. I've suggested to Magenta. That means there's 4 giant cookies. I've suggested that Magenta take 2 to David Seymour's office, because then you could feed the whole office staff, which would be a lovely thing to do. So there you go, Magenta. I've been here the whole time. Thank you, Magenta. And hopefully will be some video footage, and we'll find out about that tomorrow. Well, I'll say one thing. You'll find out about that tomorrow, Chewy, because I'm not going to be here. You and Emily will find out about that tomorrow.
I did get your message.
Yeah, it's just because I've done 14-hour days to get ready for this weekend, and I either want time tomorrow night to do some more work towards the event and the party, or it might be the only time my wife and I can hang out until about Monday. If all the work's done. But I just thought it might be smart to see if Emily wants to come on and take my role, Pink Pat, in the house, just to give me a few extra hours freedom to aim towards our live event and our Christmas party. So yes, unless of course it makes the news and it breaks the news, and I'm and BHN is the lead story on One News for the terrorist attack on Parliament via Cookiegate. I might pop in then, but if anything less than that, Yeah, I'll probably see you guys on Monday. Okay, Chewy, anything you want to add to that? They look like good cookies, eh?
They are good cookies.
I've never had one.
Like, I think if we've established some sort of tradition here where you just say some egregious smarmy shit and someone sends you a cookie and makes you eat it, I can say worse things if it gets me more cookies.
Is that a cookie or is that like a cushion? It looks like a cushion.
That is their giant cookie plush toy.
I was going to say it's a very plush.
Friend
toy
of mine
looking
just
cookie.
got these the other day. Like the whole Dubai chocolate trend can miss me, but she got those cookies the other day. They're the Dubai style chocolate cookie pies.
You're saying
amazing.
about spreading around cookies with other people. I think someone has suggested to Tanya a cake for Stanford when it reaches 1,700 schools with something like, what did she say? It's disgusting. That's disgusting that these schools are doing this.
You seem to be disgusted. Don't be disgusted by this giant cookie.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, there is. I realize there is an irony that we're spending money on sending people lovely items to take the piss. I get it, but we do dumb shit so you don't have to since 2021. All right. Anything else, Joey? This last story is quite short.
We could get a cookie. We could leave it outside in the rain for a little while till it gets moldy and then send it. But I don't think that would be as good an advertisement for Moustache as a business.
Yeah, what kind of government passes legislation and then within days, let's say weeks, that government, 2/3 of that government are actively saying, yeah, I think we're going to campaign against this. I think that's where we sit. Unbelievable. And why the world is taking this government as a joke can be seen right there. What isn't a joke is our lovely patrons. We've always said you get 22% more attractive when you become a patron. If you've been a part of us for a while, you've been watching from the backgrounds and you want to be a part of us moving forward, a really good way to do that is to be involved with the Patreon. Patreon.com/Big Hearing News. If you want to get behind us, if you want to support us, if you want to help us with that future projections of what we're planning to do, one of the ways we do that is by seeing what we've got in our patronage. This year is going to be a huge year. The costs to BHN this year are going to be tens of thousands more than they were last year if we get a chance to do what we want to do, which of course is go out into the public more and do some live events. One of the ways we can start to plan that is through our lovely patrons. Patreon.com/Big Hearing News if you want to be a part of that. And I hope you do. All right, team, let's keep going, shall we? What about the meth? We're at like it's been said that nowhere in the world has seen increase in meth use like New Zealand has. We are world leading in our increase in meth use, and this government, using their own metrics, are 100% responsible for that increase in meth use. Check it out.
For 20 years, New Zealand has been losing its fight against meth, and our health system is now under immense pressure.
Every single day you'll get somebody that comes in, having used and difficult to control and difficult to manage, physical illness, mental health problems, psychosis. They're a danger to everybody. You've got to have special space. You've got to have security guards helping to hold them down sometimes while you need to sedate them, against their will. It is a huge impost, way more than any other condition.
Speaking from a busy Waikato hospital, Dr. John Bonning explains that he is dealing with more and more meth-related admissions and seeing an increase in Kiwis suffering from heart failure as a result of chronic use.
A 30 or 40-year-old has the heart of an 80-year-old now, and that's irreversible and permanent damage.
Terrifying. The story finished off by talking about the meth increase in New Zealand, and this is one of the points I do want to touch on and come back to after this, it's a couple of minutes, is that the meth increase in New Zealand is like nowhere else in the world. We've heard this before. This story is from tonight. We hear it again. Meth use in New Zealand, the increase in meth use in New Zealand is at a point it's like nowhere else in the world. It's increasing here faster than anywhere else in the world.
New Zealand's crisis is snowballing.
The amount of methamphetamine consumed in the country doubled at the end of last year within a few months. And really in my whole career of drug policy research, I haven't really come across a similar situation anywhere around the world.
The price of meth has dropped by...
Did you get that? Nowhere else in the world. Never seen before by the researcher. Ever. Nowhere else in the world. Lie down. Lie down.
A staggering 38% in the past 5 years, causing an explosion in use.
That's really significant during a cost of living increase that you get this, nearly 40% decline in the price. And you can understand how that opens up drug use to a whole new type of young people in particular.
Just last week, Australian police revealed they'd arrested two 22-year-old Kiwis accused of importing $37.7 million worth of meth through Melbourne Airport. 24 hours later, New Zealand police joined the headlines, laying nearly 200 charges in relation to a major drug smuggling syndicate using corrupt baggage handlers at Auckland Airport.
The unfortunate news is that this is not the worst of it.
America has been battling a wave of fentanyl.
Yeah, this is pretty terrifying. The next suggestion is first comes the meth, then floods the fentanyl, which is really only a problem in a mass way in America at the moment.
Adulterated meth, a cheaper, more lethal offering.
The fentanyl crisis wreaking havoc in communities across the country.
More than 100,000 Americans died last year from drug overdoses.
Chris Wilkins says it's only a matter of time before traffickers try their new trick on New Zealand.
We consume a lot of meth, so even in international comparisons, we're first, second, third in methamphetamine consumption. So we're really exposed. There's parts of New Zealand that are deprived and easy for decision makers in Wellington to forget, but they're breeding grounds for these kinds of problems. And now with fentanyl, we're not really getting a handle on how a drug problem can change very quickly.
So one of the foundations of this show is to hold this government to the standard they held the last government to, or to the standard they set for themselves. They held the last government to a standard around crime, in particular ram raids is what I'm thinking about. And the Labour Party, which was a majority government, was wholeheartedly and 100% responsible for the ram raid uptick in New Zealand. Holding this government to the same standard they held the last lot to, this government is 100% responsible for meth use increase like nowhere else in the world.
Yeah.
This government is responsible, based on their standard, for the highest and most significant uptake of meth anywhere in the world. And it would be hypocritical of us not to point that out based on their standard, Chewy.
They have got away with so much by keeping this as under wraps as they have. Like, that's a massive decrease. Like, decrease in costs. And, like, they're the party of business, the party of numbers. What's the way that you bring the costs down?
You flood the market.
Yeah, it means that there's an over availability of the product. That means it's getting in.
Yeah.
It means it's being manufactured and distributed. So whatever they're doing is not working. Whether it is a failure at the border, a failure in policing. I see someone in the comments goes, but where's our 500 cops? They're in New South Wales and Victoria.
Not in Queensland?
should
Queensland?
be...
Not Queensland,
no, fuck Queensland.
Okay.
It's New South Wales and Victoria. This is yet another scandal that should sink them. Labor should be going to town on them over this. Like, we had a referendum about cannabis,
Mm-hmm.
and they were against drug use. You know, that's why we didn't legalize it, because drugs are bad. It would have hit the gangs. It would have hit the gangs hard. The gangs are selling weed. The gangs are also selling meth. And if the price of meth is approaching the price, you know, like, I'm out of weed, but I do have meth and it's cheap. You know, it's just so dumb. Everything, this should be hung around their necks. I don't think it's uncharitable.
Mm. Yeah, no, and look, and good for the goose, man. I mean, like we were talking before about the economy as it is right now, and how, you know, there was world pressure from the world as to one of the reasons Labor struggled last time around. There's no pressure this time around. It's a bit the same. Like this is not happening around the world because we're being told by the experts this is not, so they can't sit there and go like Labor could, well, there's international influences on why the economies fail. They can't say, well, this is an international trend on meth use, because it's not. That's the other thing. This is happening here.
We're a soft target.
Like nowhere else in the world. And as Chewy's been pointing out, and I think as we all know, you know, the backroom people that have been stripped away from all sorts of categories to do with, you know, the border and all things that aren't front-facing people. So now the front-facing people are going to have to spend more time doing the backroom stuff. And guess what that means? That means they're not as active on the front line and things get through more easily. As Chewy just said, we're a soft touch.
Like, I'm going to agree with Gary here. Like, prohibition is a problem. Like, and again, we've mentioned a couple of times on the show today about adult conversations. We've never been in a place to have an adult conversation, adult national conversation about how we treat drug use, drug abuse, and addiction. Okay, because we don't want to talk about it, and we want to stick to these old rules of prohibition and that sort of thing. We can't really attack it. It's happening in the dark corners. It's gangs and it's smuggling and it's all of that sort of thing. We can't even have that conversation about weed, let alone anything else.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And look, I'm not a fan of drugs. I've never touched the stuff, but I can objectively sit here and go, well, the current way of doing things doesn't work. And I've been a fan. I think I don't even think it's the whole. Is it Spain or Portugal that just made a sweeping change and said, look, we're going to treat drug abuse as a health issue rather than a crime and punishment issue.
Yeah, that's what it totally should be.
Yeah, and that makes sense to me, and it solves or goes some way into solving a lot of issues.
It also brings it into the same sort of realm as alcohol as well. You know,
yeah.
Alcohol, when alcohol causes like significant health issues for a person, it becomes a health issue. When it's impairing someone to the point that it's impacting their whole life, it becomes a health issue.
Yeah. Like there's a comment there, Chewy, do you drink alcohol? That's a drug, as is coffee. Yeah. I'm talking obviously about illegal drugs, but I mean that shows the double standards, right? Is, you know, it's perfectly reasonable and understandable and sociable for me to go and drink whiskey until a blackout drunk, or that sort of thing. But that's how this stuff should be treated. And this government is so hooked up on basically looking at everything the wrong way that we'll never get there, and it's a much bigger problem.
Well,
but
it's the exact
here
idea.
Is a perfect example of the fact that however they thought they were solving a problem, they've fucking made it worse. It's happened under their watch, and they don't have the tools, the research, or the ideological will to solve it in a way that it's solvable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like you say, this is why you know that they're being disingenuous, having grown up conversations. Luxon wants to have grown up conversations around things that are impacting him and his ability to, do whatever the hell he wants, like retirement age, because it's going to cost and they want some of that monies back. But I've had the debate with several people about the cannabis. No one has yet given me one good reason why cannabis shouldn't have been decriminalized. There would have been tax take. It would have been safer. It wouldn't be clogging up our I don't think there's so much anymore because police kind of turn a blind eye, but it wouldn't be clogging up our courts. The people who got, they wouldn't be getting bad stuff because it'd be regulated. So you're not going to get it laced with other stuff from the gangs anymore. There was, and more people weren't going to start taking it. The blimmin' Christo-fascists come out and start talking about, say nope to dope. And they literally would say those sorts of things. Only one dope here, Brady. But the research is a very different thing. So, I don't know, Joey. But look, I think that Laura has the best comment of the night about Luxon. Back on crack. It's a good one.
Yeah.
It's a real good one. Yeah, I think it's fair. I think it's fair that if their standard around ram raids and stuff is it's 100% the fault of the previous government, then the increase in meth use is 100% the responsibility of this government. It's fair. It's their metric. Hey, whānau, if you haven't seen it so far, we've got sort of a brand new website. It hasn't been around for that long, and I'd really encourage you to check it out, bhn.nz. It's a bit of a hub for the stuff that the Big Hairy Network does, which includes things like Craig Rennie's Locked Out and Dr. Gary Piender's The Front Line, and of course our friends at The Collective, all sort of around that area. They're all involved with bhn.nz under the shows page. You can even go to the Friday night show for BHN, which is all magenta and all Emily. There's other stuff on there. There's shops on there as well, but it's a good place for you to also figure out how to get to Patreon, how to get to the Discord. They're all there. Click on the Discord and there you go. It comes up. You can get a link to there. So no longer do we have to try and renew our Discord link. You just go to bhn.nz and have a look. This year, we're probably going to do more with the website. I imagine we're going to do a few more blogs and stuff. I mean, there is a pretty sad attempt at a few blogs. But really, in general, we will be using the bhn.nz more this year, and for you to be a part of that and to be insightful, to be aware of what we're doing, then all you need to do is head to bhn.nz and check out the website. That would be spectacular. All right, let's keep trucking into the rest of the show right now, shall we? And have a look at how News Talk ZB and the platform, 80% of their political narrative that's not provided by a political party is provided by the Taxpayers Union and the Free Speech Union, which is terrifying. Paul Barlow explains. So let's get into this, shall we? I was watching The Collective last night, and the lovely Paul Barlow brought up some research that he was citing. And what I didn't realize at the moment, and I realized since talking to him last night and this morning, is that the research is his research that he has done. Some research which is a structural analysis of non-party political actors in New Zealand media called the asymmetry of influence. There is some very interesting, top line information that we heard about last night. I wanted to drill into a bit deeper. And I thought the best way to do it is to get the researcher on himself. So let's welcome to the show, Paul, the other one, Barlow. Kia ora, sir.
Kia ora. How's everyone doing tonight?
Well, I mean, I'm doing okay, but there's some heavy shit out there at the moment that does make you kind of go, I mean, how often can you say what is happening in this world? What is happening to this world? How often can you say that and just continue on? That shooting, for example, the reason it's worldwide news, well, there's two reasons. One is that it's focusing on a Jewish community and the anti-Semitism label has been put on it, rightfully so. Let's get that clear. But the other reason it's been put on is because it happened in Australia. And over the weekend, the 370th mass shooting of the year happened in America. So we don't talk about that one, but it happened in Australia, so the world is talking about it. Not the only reason, but one of the reasons it's being talked about is it's atypical. That means opposite. Atypical is opposite, and typical is same. It's atypical for places outside of America. So I'm doing good. I'm busy. Looking forward to getting a break, but the world is fucked.
Yeah. So you should enjoy the break while you can, because
Yeah.
next year is going to be an absolute mess. If it's a mess now, it's going to be even worse next year because we have the election.
Yeah. Are you
In
suggesting
case anybody wasn't aware.
Are you suggesting that the world's going to be worse than fucked? Is the world ending next year or something? What are you suggesting?
Oh, it might actually be an improvement if it did in some ways. There'd be less people around to bugger things up if that happened. I think next year is actually a really important one for us to learn about how we get manipulated, because I think that's something that we're lacking at the moment. It's something I noticed during the local body election. People are, I hate to say it, but people are dumb. A person might be smart, but a group of people are dumb. You take the number of people in that crowd and you divide that number by the average number of the lowest person's IQ. You know, they're not a smart thing, a group of people. And elections show us that over and over, because people listen to messaging from politicians, from media, from friends and family that's highly skewed. And it's really frustrating to see really smart, really engaged people get it wrong and being fed stuff that's wrong. So for me, I think that's a really important thing for us to worry about next year, just in general, not just in terms of media, but knowing that there is an election going forward and that there's at least two parties that we've got there who are nasty, nasty organizations that go out of their way to vilify and harm specific community groups. And that's not the sort of thing we want to see in this country. And currently they're partners in the coalition. So I think, it's going to be a big, long one for us next year.
Now, you showed some research last night about media in New Zealand. I've got the research that you've written. This doesn't have the graphs and stuff on it. So do you want to share any of your stuff from your end, or should we just talk to it? I've got all the stuff, but
I might need to actually
pie
bring it up
charts
to share it from my end, because I don't have it in front of me right this second.
Okay.
See, this is how prepared I was. I was actually at Costco this afternoon when you sent out the link. I've been that disorganized today.
The asymmetry of influence. Tell us, when you're doing research, like obviously top secret, high level, influential research, do you go out asking a question and then that's it? Or do you go out looking for an answer? Like I already know you don't do the latter, because that means you would skew it.
That wouldn't be the way to do the research, but you can start off with a supposition of what you're going to be looking for. For me, I've always known that our media is right-leaning. It's just something that I've always been brought up with when I've studied it. Because I have a master's in film and television from Wintec and a Bachelor of Arts with honours from the University of Waikato in screen media. This is my academic background that I've been dealing with for years. And when you go through and you learn how to recognize what is actually right-wing media, how it focuses more on individual responsibility and on corporate information over collective responsibility and outcomes, you can see that our media has always kind of leaned that way, but it's felt in the last sort of 5 to 10 years like it's been shifting to me. So I wanted to see whether or not it was me getting a little bit older and a little bit more cynical, or whether or not it was actually something that we could measure and we could work out what it was that was causing that to happen. And there are a lot of factors that sort of played into it. COVID was a really big one, for example. It was this flashpoint for people where, suddenly there's the public interest journalism fund. So, it's a conspiracy. Jacinda's bribing the media. And before that, we were getting a lot of influence coming in from the States that was starting to get people to question how media works and the narratives and things like that. But we were also seeing these lobby groups like the Taxpayers Union and the Free Speech Union that were set up specifically to push certain narratives that tie in most closely with the ACT Party. There is actually, I think it's something like 7 or 8 different members from the 2002 ACT Party list who are now directly involved or have got some kind of linkage with disinformation groups or far-right media outlets. So you've got like the Newmans, for example, Frank and Muriel, who were on that list. They run the New Zealand Centre for Political Research. You've got Stephen Franks, the lawyer. He was the person who trained up Jordan Williams. So from him, you get your Free Speech Union, your Taxpayers Union. There was Joanne Reeder. She currently runs a conspiracy page in Hamilton called City Watch, which 4 of their new councillors have been regular commenters on. So there's a weird network.
Yikes.
Rodney Hyde, leader of the party in 2002, he's a host on Reality Check Radio. So there's all of this long-term influence that's been feeding into the way that we see media now, that's been pushing the media to the right, and people don't realize that it's the frog in the boiling pot sort of scenario. So I wanted to measure it more than anything. I wanted to see just how bad it was.
It's funny to hear you say, like, obviously we don't disagree with you. It's funny to hear you say that you've always known the media to be sort of right-coded, right-leaning, right-wing, whatever. Because that's obviously not the narrative that many inside the media or many commentators outside the media pointing in would have us know. So without even looking at the research, as you've grown, like in the last 20 years, what kind of things do you see that lead you to the conclusion, I think this is right-wing coded?
So a lot of it, because I grew up in a rural area, it's national hard. A lot of the local media that we had then, which we don't have now because, the media sphere is shrinking, that was focusing a lot on your individual responsibility and individual actions, as well as your corporate, the dairy factories are in this way, Anchor's having this happen, Fonterra's the big thing. It was very much right-coded because you're dealing with a right audience, farmers and rural folk and that kind of thing. But that local media feeds into our regional media, which feeds into our national media. It's all part of a process that we call the propaganda model, and where individual media information comes from in the morning and how it feeds through to the day and impacts us what we see at night. But because we've had that loss of local media, we've had to amalgamate things a bit more, which means the information our regional media and our national media are putting out now is a lot more generalized, but there's no resources for it. The staff aren't there. And so you have groups that come and going, hey, here is something that I prepared for you earlier. You don't have to do any work on it. Just go and present it as is. And that's where places like the TPU have stepped in and actually pushed us to the right. And people don't realize it, because they're just presented with stuff that they've been trained up on to believe is completely impartial and has been well researched and has been put out and looked after by media who knows what they're doing.
Chill, you got any thoughts before we get into some data in that?
Oh, I've got so many thoughts. This is something that is a relatively new change in my experience. We didn't seem to have the plethora of think tanks and public policy commentators and that sort of thing, even, I don't know, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. I also want to acknowledge it's seeing that and its effect on the media is what has essentially given birth to projects like BHN, like what you're doing, that there is a reaction to it that is only 5 years old, tops, of left-wing commentators going, we kind of need to put our thumb on the scale here to get it back somewhere. And it seems to really hit a vein with our listeners of this is what is missing from traditional media at the moment. So yeah, I mean, I think this is a really valid thing to look at, because we are a smaller country, a smaller sphere of influence in the media, and I think in a lot of the bigger markets and that sort of thing, what an excellent place to test things here in New Zealand.
I know when you talk about things like the Atlas Group, there's always going to be people on the right who sit there go, oh yeah, conspiracy theory kind of thing. But there is very much a dedicated streamline of the way that Atlas connected groups in this country in particular work and approach the media. So I think at the very least, that's something that people need to be aware of, that there are those connections. And it sort of filters down as well to places like organizations like Groundswell. They are very pro the way that they want to do farming. And they might deny that they have those links to these other Atlas-linked organizations. But, the website was set up by the campaign company, by Jordan and his group. The Groundswell people paid, I think it was $300,000 to the campaign company to campaign on behalf of political parties during the last election. So there's this influence that's coming through in other lobby groups and other ways that people don't realize. And because we're such a small market, people don't know that it's there, which is the really frustrating part. We've always all been taught, media is what's presented on TV, and for a vast majority of the time that most of us have been alive, that's what it was. News was 6 o'clock. You sat down, you watched Simon, he told you what was going to happen, and because he said it was going to happen, that's what was reality. But it's certainly changed a lot since then.
I've got something to show you, right? Just kind of talking about you mentioned just then about sort of uncritically platforming things. I don't know enough academically whether this is true or not, but answer me this question. I'm making an accusation, but I want the experts to try to fill this out. There was a story on Stuff today talking about the gunman in Australia, and it said this, Naveed Akram, 24, was apprehended at the shooting alongside one other alleged shooter. One of these individuals has died, full stop. This masthead understands Akram is not the deceased. Now, I thought that you're supposed to replace the word "this masthead" as in whoever's printing it, this masthead. So it should be Stuff understands Akram is not the deceased. Speaking with this masthead, speaking with Stuff as police surrounded her house. And it looks to me like not only are we talking about necessarily kind of a right-coded narrative being pushed through, but they are literally just cutting and pasting without even reading them and putting them up on the website. Now, I'm not 100% sure on that, but that's why I pulled this up, because it looks to me, I've never seen any article anywhere in the world ever use the word "this masthead" referring to itself. That's where you put the name of the publication in there. So this was on Stuff this morning, and if what I'm saying is correct, and I'm saying if, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if this, what someone in Stuff's done is they've literally got something off the, I don't know, the telex, whatever they use these days, and just gone copy, paste, go live. Haven't even read it to change the wording of it at all. First of all, is that right about how they're using the words "this masthead"? And if it is, shit.
Yeah. Technically, this masthead is the name of the paper, so that would make sense. And sharing news stories isn't new. You've got Reuters, you've got the Associated Press. They do content for all over the world.
Oh, they do it here. ODT shares with New Zealand Herald. Herald shares with ODT. Like RNZ goes on stuff. That happens all the time. But that hasn't even been read.
No, it's just been cut and paste. That's actually one of the problems that media has when it comes to something dramatic like this happening. You want to get the information out. You want people to be informed, and the public want to be informed, but you don't have the information. It creates what we call an information vacuum. So that's where it gets filled in with other stuff. And so you're rushing to get things out. It's where Brian Tamaki, for example, put out his bullshit about immigration after the attack last night, because it's Brian Tamaki. He's a horrible, violent person who has called for violence and had violence done in his name, but this is a bad thing according to him, and we should do what he says. David Seymour put something out about it as well. And the comment section that David Seymour has following his comment is full of horrible, racist, anti-Islamic stuff because it's David Seymour's followers. And they're filling in the information vacuum that's there. When a newspaper's doing something like that, it's because they want to get the information out. They should know to change it, but it might be something that's just happened so quickly they haven't had a chance to do it.
So it's this drive to be first to get the stuff out there. Whereas the truth actually, like when you're talking minutes, you don't need to be first. You need to be right. Like we often talk here, Paul, about bias. Like I don't care about bias as long as you're accurate. I care about accuracy. Yeah. We have a bias. We're open about it. But as long as we're accurate, then the bias doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's actually also a really uniquely left-wing, right-wing mindset. When you're talking to somebody on the left, they understand that there is a difference between bias and facts. When you talk to somebody on the right, they tend to get the two confused. And they seem to think if your facts don't agree with what they believe, then you are clearly biased against them. It's a really interesting dichotomy to sit down and watch. And you can see it when you're talking to people about simple things, left-right stuff, that they will sit there and get the two very heavily confused.
Yeah. I would like to have a look more detail at some of your research and stuff now, because one of the most important things I heard last night, and obviously it's a small snapshot of your overall work you've done on this, is the locations, or outlets is probably a better word, the outlets, the media outlets that receive information from both political sources and non-political sources, and then how that information, especially from the non-political sources, gets used to drive the narrative of that media outlet. So maybe we can speak to the outlet-specific saturation estimates. Explain what you did, how you did it, and what you found.
Okay, so what happened was every month, in every week, there would be one day that I'd sit down and basically go through and count the stories. A very manual labor kind of thing. And what I found is that when you're dealing with political parties, most of the outlets are actually pretty even in how they get that information out. How they present it's different, but it's even in getting that information out.
So the Greens press release gets used, ACT's press release gets used, Labour's press release gets used, Te Pāti Māori's press release gets ignored. Used.
Yeah, exactly. To be fair, Te Pāti Māori was actually the outlier when it came to the political party research that isn't in the report. They have nowhere near the reach in terms of the other parties, and it was the only political party that actually had less content used than the Taxpayers Union.
Right, wow, okay. So that's when you're talking about the political source being a political party.
Yeah.
Pretty even across the board-ish.
Yes.
And then you go to the political sources that are not political parties.
Exactly.
What are we seeing and hearing?
We see a massive over-reliance on the Taxpayers Union and Curia because they've created this media content piece that they literally hand to these media outlets. But they've also created an ecosystem that means that when they get a phone call from a producer going, we need somebody here to talk about this thing you've presented to us, they've got somebody there in a minute. They've got it prepared and organized, and they've got this whole ecosystem set up so that they can be seen as the people setting the narrative. And from there, everyone else is running to play catch up. They're really heavily used on outlets like News Talk and the platform because they're talkback. It's constantly needing somebody to fill in a space, to talk to something. And if you've got somebody who's willing to stand and do that at the drop of a hat, they're going to be the people that you get on. So they're the ones that end up being platformed. And it helps that they are in the same ideological sphere. The News Talk and the platform are both very much right-wing outlets, and they're very much wanting to talk about the narrative that's being put forward by the TPU. The Herald's a little bit different, and that's mostly because it's print first before it goes out into any kind of talkback or video stuff. But that's changed a little bit more recently with the introduction, is it now with Ryan Bridges, whatever their breakfast show is. Same with Radio New Zealand. Right up until about 6 to 8 months ago, they were actually more in line with what we were seeing with Stuff. And now they've moved a lot further into taking things directly from these organizations and printing them verbatim without pushback. And the one that they tend to use the most is actually the New Zealand initiative. So they're printing a lot of their stuff. They're putting a lot of their stuff online as here's a piece from the New Zealand initiative. Here's research from the New Zealand initiative. And there's no counter to it, which becomes really problematic. But if you talk to RNZ about finances, for example, 9 times out of 10, they'll get a quote from somebody like Nikki Noboat, and then they'll go and talk to Craig, and they'll get a counterpoint. They're quite good at that sort of balance, but they're getting worse at really partisan information going out. Whereas Stuff is actually really good at going and getting that balance and not taking the bait quite so much as the rest of them. So Stuff is technically our most trusted news source. It's our largest read news source, and it seems to be the one that has the least amount of falling for the clickbait from the right.
That's fascinating because, of course, people on the right, and I'm thinking of a particular melted pile of pancake batter, all they ever talk about is the woke. Stuff is the wokest, and how do you trust them? They're woke, and they got public money, and they're woke. Look, I'm a bit slow, Paul. I need you to explain one thing to me.
Sure.
So what we're looking at right now is this graph that says Taxpayers Union, Free Speech Union, Taxpayers Union, Free Speech Union. I need to put those speech marks around that. When outlets refer to non-party pressure groups, outlet is the blue. Now, the 0, 20, 40, 60, 80 across the bottom, just explain what that is. So are you saying, okay, so this is the thing that I need to clarify. Are you saying that 80% of the information that the Taxpayers Union and the Free Speech Union provide to News Talk ZB, they then use? Or are you saying that it drives 80% of their narrative?
It drives 80% of their narrative.
What?
Or it's mentioned in 80% of their content. So it's usually designed to drive the narrative. Yeah, it'll be Kerry Woodham sitting down going, oh, did you hear about the Free Speech Union? So-and-so is being cancelled because of such and such, which is how the Free Speech Union gets its information out there. It tends to work very much on that, let's create a little bit of controversy and then that's going to get us coverage. The Taxpayers Union is the one that tends to be the most consistently mentioned because every month there's that poll is what it boils down to. And sure, the poll is discredited and Kerry is not actually part of the regulatory group anymore. And they've been fined or pulled up for just last year on misleading questions and going against the rules of that group or claiming to still be under it. It's a bad poll, but it's the thing that leads the news every month because it's consistent. When TV3 sort of had its little issues and got handed over to Stuff, their polling stopped. TVNZ's polling hasn't always been the most consistent. TPU shows up and here's a Curia poll every month. So here's something consistent that media can deal with. So what it does is it means that there will be stories that get referred back to it. Christopher Luxon, how are things going? We saw the latest Curia poll and, everybody seems to love you for some reason on the Curia poll versus this is the Curia poll and here's the lead story. So it ends up in about 80% of all of their content where they mention a non-political organization in terms of politics.
So where they mention a non-political, so 80% of stories where they mention a non-political or 80% of their stories?
It ends up being 80% of their stories mentioning politics and non-politic groups.
So do we know what that would be like overall? Like how many stories are they doing? I guess what I'm going is how much influence are these guys having on these narratives? Because 80% of the stories might be different from 80% of the stories about political issues.
Yeah. So it actually depends on the outlet for how it impacts the narrative. Something like News Talk ZB, it really heavily impacts that because it's structurally tied into how talkback works. You want to get that interaction. You're trying to get people riled up so people continue to listen. And here's something that's kind of inflammatory that also agrees with what we're saying. What happens here is that union reps tend to go on both News Talk and the platform and they use targets that they're aiming for that the host then come into. So, Chippy, for example, he's been out there talking about a CGT and, how terrible is that? With something like the Herald, it's a little bit different because it's written first. It's text first more than anything else that goes out. So they've got the structural symmetry that you find with talkback, but they have more time to be able to go through and make sure that the information they've got is as accurate as they want it to be. So that's why they have less influence than the two talkback platforms on there. So yeah, it is different for each one of them. Radio New Zealand, for example, their written content and their broadcast content can quite often be very different. So it's about trying to find a balance in there as well. Not to talk about what do you say? I'm talking about behind the curtain or whatever it is, but that's such a cop out from News Talk ZB. I can speak from experience. I had to do 6-hour talkback shows in the middle of the night. I never once had the opportunity to get a Taxpayers Union speaker on. I had to find my own stuff and create my own content. So do you know what it just goes to show? It goes to show if that's the case that they're doing that for talkback, it goes to show one of two things. For the platform is they don't have a big enough audience to run a talkback show. But for News Talk ZB, it just shows laziness. Because it's not necessary. It's been taken over by Jim Grennan. So since you were there, it's been taken over by a hard right Canadian who paid for Chantal Baker. Yeah. He was her big sponsor.
Yeah.
So you've got somebody there who we know is willing to pay for disinformation, who wants things handed to him easy, who is looking for ways to cut costs. And here comes Jordan with a whole bunch of information built for him on a platter. Why wouldn't he use it?
I want to say one other thing, then Chewy, I'll shut up and you can take over. So what we're saying literally is someone like Sean Plunkett screams from the rooftops, we can't trust that because it's public money. Money's coming from the public to fund those stories. Whereas what you're telling us is 80% of the non-political party political influence that's going into a place like the platform is coming from Atlas money, is coming from right-wing money. So apparently what he's saying is public money that is out in the public that you can see how it's being used and spent, because I have to show you, is untrustworthy, and backroom handshakes, secret wink, wink, nudge, nudge, that money is fair. Just goes to show the lunacy of the whole thing. Chewy, sir.
Mm-hmm. If you want to see a
there's a couple
really
of
good
things.
example of this in action, actually, have you seen the Media Watch piece in the Herald today?
No.
So they're talking about bias. They're accusing TVNZ of bias because TVNZ did a outside study on the bias of their presentation, and the Ombudsman decided that they needed to update some of the information that they've put out there. The report will never be released. That there's too much commercially sensitive stuff in there. But the framing that the Herald specifically has used on this is screeching about how the competition is clearly biased in the way that they deal with things. The actual article will tell you that most of the things that they are tweaked are minor, and they included making sure you've got more diversity, equity, and inclusion in your actual reporting to get a fairer understanding of what was going on, and to make sure that you're talking to more communities who could be impacted by various stories to make sure you get a fairer chance of looking out there. So the big scary headline, because it's premium, it's behind a paywall, most people are going to base their reaction on that versus the content of the story. And it's just another way that this bias gets put out there in an asymmetrical way that feeds the audience, because the audience is going to make up their mind based on the headlines 85% of the time.
Agreed. Chewy.
So I've got two things that I want to mention. First of all, sort of looping back to that whole this masthead report sort of thing. I agree. Something like this kicks off and it is a rush to just get information out there. But I have seen many examples of stuff just running with whatever the Sydney Morning Herald is putting out.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the reporting that they've been doing has been incredibly sloppy. Just from an editing and grammar point of view, right through to the factual information. Like that sentence that you highlighted, Pat, referring to the shooter's last name, and they're a father and son pairing. And then they say last name is believed to not be the one that's deceased. Well, they're both called Akram. This is a sign that nobody is looking at it. Like they're not, nobody at the Sydney Morning Herald is running through it going, yes, this is factually correct and makes sense, put it out. Nobody from Stuff on the New Zealand Herald is casting their eye over it to clean it up or clarify some points. And I saw another really good example of this over the weekend with a local, I think it was Stuff, just taking verbatim with no pushback the official US government line on the seizing of the oil tanker off Venezuela. There was no critical thought that just went into it. It just went, yep, it was an illegal freighter and it's been taken, and that's just what we have on the statement. We're not going to look any further into it. We are just going to, what to my eyes look like, we're just going to repeat the narrative to justify going to war again. And that sort of stuff, when you see it, does breed a distrust in the media. Like, because you're like, well, where's the other side of this? I want at least some pushback so I can get a sense of where things lie. The other thing I want to mention, as far as what you've got there about who's getting their stories from where, is this kind of like more factual news reporting, or are you considering the opinion piece writers?
So it's a bit of both, to be honest. So opinions are something that a lot of people mistake for news, but when it comes to overall content and overall narrative that's going out there, it combines the two of them. But the scary part is, if I'm told, look, this is the opinion of the TPU, then I know what I'm reading. It's when they present content from something like the TPU as news uncritically that it becomes really problematic, because clearly it's been made with a very specific bias and very specific perspective in mind. And we don't have anything on the left that does that. All of our content on the left tends to be reactionary. It tends to be downplayed a little bit, and it tends to be factual, so it's boring. We need to find a way around that.
Certainly in that opinion space, I think of Hawkesby.
Yeah.
Hawkesby and Hoskins. So you have a husband and wife combo that just have a headlock on column inches and airtime that will just, you got 2 columns for the price of 1 often.
Yeah.
They're almost
but
doing a
also
tag
in a
team
really
show.
interesting way within the NZME ecosystem. You can go to the Herald and you might have a premium Hoskins hot take minute or one from his wife. Or you can go to News Talk ZB and get a whole bunch of them for free. But News Talk ZB is slightly further to the right than the stuff they're presenting on the Herald. So they're going to give you the further right stuff for free over the not quite as far right as the free stuff that you pay for. And so it drives people there. It's a really fascinating funnel system to drive people to the far right who then don't realize that they've shifted that way. And that makes it much harder to get to them and try and sell an idea like a universal basic income or a CGT or, not being a shithead to people, because that's very much the attitude that they're being fed for free, that they're told is news.
Yeah. The chat's mentioning Barry Soper and obviously Heather Duplessis Allen as well, being another couple that are dominating that opinion space as well. And it almost seems like...
Are they a couple or more like a carer and an elderly gentleman?
I would say a couple in the same way as the best example I've seen. You see it in nature. The deep sea anglerfish, where the one animal you see is actually 2 animals. The female and then the wizened set of gonads that have become part of her body because she's absorbed him. And I hate this conversation.
Yeah, but I'm going to make it worse.
Now
You ready?
the imagery there.
Yeah. No, I'm going to make it worse. Ready for this one step worse? Ready? Are you ready? Here it comes. He got her pregnant.
Oh.
Yeah, I told you. That's worse.
I think of this old joke where there's like 100-year-old man and he's married to a 23-year-old. And he's at a doctor's appointment and he says, "Oh, great news. I got my wife pregnant." And the doctor picks up his umbrella and goes, bang! "Why did you do that?" He goes, "Oh, well, if you fell over, it means that someone else shot you." I think I've mangled that joke.
Yeah,
Carry
I'm
on.
just trying to follow it. I'm a bit slow. Anyway.
Somebody else knocked her up.
Right.
Someone's shooting blanks. Someone else did it.
Gotcha.
Not that for legal reasons, not that that's what I'm saying, but it's gross. It's gross.
Anyway, derailed. Apologies.
Yeah, horrible joke. Sorry.
Where were we at? I totally.
I don't know.
I do apologise.
Well and truly derailed.
The propaganda model I was thinking about as well, Paul. You were talking about how the propaganda model works and how it goes in and then out through the outlets. It's like we're such a small country, we do it in such a small way. Fox News is the best in the world at doing this, the propaganda model. They have their Fox News breakfast show, pass an opinion, and then their afternoon shows go, some outlets are reporting that, and it's them. They're the outlet that's reported in the morning, and they're able to have this ecosystem in and of themselves that just does the propaganda and it feeds itself. And then later on, Sean Hannity gets on and he cites the afternoon guys who have turned it into sort of a story that some media outlets are, and then he turns it into a fact. It just goes like from little opinion to some reporting to this is a fact, just in one little fell swoop within the same company. It's very clever.
How often have you seen Christopher Luxon does a fluffy earpiece on breakfast and suddenly it's news at night because Christopher Luxon said this, so this is what's going to happen. It happens in every media ecosystem, and ours is no different in that respect.
Were you filled with any kind of like hope when you saw this? Like, because what this is showing us, this graph again one more time, is that stuff only has 30% of its non-political party-driven political news being fed or mentioned by the TPU or the FSU, which sounds good. Does that fill you with hope? Does that make you think Stuff is the place to go? Or is it all just bad news?
To a degree. Stuff has its own biases. If you look at something like the local elections, for example, they were very much, Tory bad in Wellington. That was their attitude. Bike lanes, all the scariest thing on the planet. But they also have other tools and mechanisms that they use to change the way people think. So if you are in Wellington and you want to look at something political in the Post, for example, that's paywalled. So, the most political city in the country has paywalled political content, and that kind of thing can change narratives and how people find things. I think for me, the hope actually comes from the fact that we can recognize the patterns, because if we can recognize the patterns, we can work our way around it, and we can educate people that, maybe the Curia poll is not the poll you should be paying attention to. Maybe anything that comes out from the Free Speech Union is not something you should be paying attention to, because we can show you exactly how it works and how it gets information. And I think, if anything, that knowledge weakens the ecosystem, and it makes it easier for people to be a little bit more receptive if they've got that information. Knowledge is always power when it comes to this kind of thing. I also think it gives me hope in that the number of left-wing content creators that I've spoken to about this in the last 24 hours, and we had conversations last night after the collective, and I've been chatting to a few people about it today. They sit there going,
Great show, by
this
the way.
gives us something to aim at. This gives us something to work around. This gives us some tool set that we can sit there and go, this is really important for people to know, so that the public feels more informed. Because ultimately, the public needs to make informed decisions. And if they're being manipulated when it comes to an election, they're not going to like the outcomes. 2 years after the last time it happened, how are people feeling? We don't want that to happen again.
Yeah. Hey, look, it's I can't believe what time it is. Time flies and all that kind of stuff when you're having fun.
Yeah.
But before we go, Chewy, do you want to wrap with anything or ask anything, or take the position at the end, saying I kind of gazumped your brilliant line of thought before?
No, not at all. I'm just, I really want more balance, and I know that some topics just shouldn't be his opinion A and opinion B, and they both have equal weight. But I think what we're seeing in the media here is one side has money and the other side does not. And
Yes,
that's what's carrying the water, and that's what's forming people's opinions.
Yeah. But I will say, one of the things that's really interesting about our ecosystem that we don't see quite so much overseas is that we've got a player like BHN in the market. What you guys do is you sit down and you take this content that's being created with a right-wing perspective, that's being fed from these right-wing groups, and you give it that leftist spin, which is something that you don't tend to find overseas. You definitely don't find it much in Australia. You certainly don't find it much in the States, where the market is very, very different. And in England, they're still sort of struggling to make that system work for them. It's a unique thing that we have here, and it's a really important thing that we have here. So don't underestimate the amount of impact that you guys have had in creating this ecosystem that so many of us are involved in, because it does make a difference in the end.
Yeah, one of the things I'm a little bit disappointed about when it comes to Waitangi Day, we had plans to do like a creator meetup in that weekend in Auckland, and invite along all the local people on the left who are doing it. That just it can't happen, unfortunately, now, which is a bit of a bummer, because I think it is important that we always are of the opinion here that a rising tide lifts all boats, which is why we start things and support things, and why on the BHN site we've got friends of BHN, and we want the ecosystem that is the left. Like I think I said last week, they have the money but we have the mana. A designer actually sent me a copy of a t-shirt, says that would be a great saying, and so we're looking at that. But I agree with that, but it's sad how often money will outbeat the mana in whatever world or whatever political or whatever country you're kind of sitting in. Money seems to be
that's Hobson's Twitch's
ultimate
attitude.
card to play.
They pay for something knowing that paying for it is going to be the thing that gets them the free press. That's how money works for these people. It shows a lack of integrity. And I think we need to point that out at every opportunity. There is no integrity in the way they work.
Hey, Paul, you're doing beautiful work. Thank you for coming and jumping in and joining us tonight. We're really enjoying
Well, I figured Christopher Luxon must have cancelled on you if you wanted me. So I'm quite happy to take his spot.
Yeah, you just need to shave your head, mate. Do a little thing. No.
Nah, that'll never happen.
We appreciate you, and I know that the people watching and listening appreciate you. It's very evident as to whenever you're in or around what we're doing. The commentary online as to the quality of the team last night, like people talking about the dream team getting together and what a lineup, and it's good. It's real good, and thank you for all the work you've put in up until this point, and we look forward to another 12 months from here. I'm not predicting what's going to happen, other than it's going to be a hell of a ride up to the next election.
Yeah, it's all right. We'll get there. We'll fix things. We'll kick this lot out. Hopefully help Winston retire forever.
I think I was going to say something that could be taken the wrong way, like Death trying to work on that, but I think Winston Peters has probably gambled with Death a few times, and Winston Peters always seems to come out on top.
I honestly think he's just too pickled. At this stage, there is just so much preservative and alcohol in his body that it's going to take an asteroid to take him out.
Yeah. All right, dude. Be well. If we don't speak to you beforehand, have a great Christmas, and
You too.
look forward to a rocking 2026.
Bring it on.
All right, cool. Thanks, Paul.
Cheers,
Hey, guys.
Paul.
Talk to you later.
Okie dokie, whānau. That's us for another night. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being a part of us. One thing I didn't mention tonight is just a reminder that the BHN store has a massive special on 30% off everything in store other than the mugs. The mugs are already at a massively low price. Other places sell mugs for like $20-25 each. We're doing them for $12.95. So we can't afford to give a discount on those. But everything else has a 30% discount on it in the store, bhn.nz, and use the promo code XMAS2025 at checkout. Remember, that runs out this week. Tomorrow night, that was December we did tonight. So tomorrow night we've done all our 12 months. On the 12th day of Christmas, my true love said to me, what the fuck are we doing tomorrow night? Well, the answer is the next two nights are going to be best of best ofs. So tomorrow night is the best of Waitangi Day. Asking you guys before we wrapped up what you wanted to hear about. And lots of people said, Waitangi Day, let's have some of that Waitangi Day conversation. I got a chance to talk to Marama Davidson. I got a chance to interview Chippy. I got a chance to have a chat with, who else do we have a chat with? Oh, John Campbell, which I think we've already played. I'm not sure whether that's coming up tonight or tomorrow night or not, but we'll see. But the best of Waitangi Day is tomorrow night's show. And also remember, Thursday night is the best of, meaning the most viewed 3 clips of 2025 on YouTube. They are that is the programming for Thursday night. But we'll catch you tomorrow night with the best of Waitangi here on BHN. Hooroo.